It's been nearly 3 decades since the release of Pulp Fiction, and it's still one of the most beloved films of all time, even though one of the lead actor's parents didn't appreciate it. Here are some fascinating facts about Quentin Tarantino's violent classic. John Travolta joined the cast of Pulp Fiction during a low point in his career. He started out strong in the 70s, parlaying his success in the TV smash hit Welcome Back, Kotter into even bigger roles in films like Grease, Saturday Night Fever, and Blowout, the last of which Quentin Tarantino considers one of his top 3 movies ever made. Regardless, he hadn't made a movie like that in quite some time when he got a call from Tarantino in the early 90s. After the success of his debut feature, Reservoir Dogs, the filmmaker had the clout to live out his dream and make his idol a star again. That's a very kind gesture, but the way Travolta tells the story makes it sound almost creepy. During an appearance at the Supernova Comic-Con and gaming event in Adelaide, the actor shared his tale of being invited to Tarantino's house and discovering his collection of Travolta-themed board games. Travolta said, "He just had this fantasy of being with his favorite actor and playing the board games from that actor's movies." Travolta, being a bit eccentric himself, found this odd behavior thoughtful and charming rather than unnerving. Pulp Fiction is one of the most quotable movies ever made, but few lines have stuck in viewers' heads quite like the monologue that Samuel L. Jackson's character Jules delivers to his victims, eventually inspiring him to leave crime behind. He claims to be quoting scripture. Specifically, a passage he says is called Ezekiel 25:17.
"And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee."
If you know how biblical citation works, you'll notice Jules speaks for a lot longer than one verse. And in fact, only the ending of the speech comes from the source Jules claims for it. The rest is a mishmash of Old and New Testament, with sources ranging from Genesis to the 23rd Psalm. It seems like a classic example of Quentin Tarantino's irreverent mix-and-match approach to writing. And it is, but he didn't actually write the monologue at all. Jules' speech actually comes from Bodegato Kiba, The Bodyguard in English, a low-budget comic book adaptation full of crime and violence. Starring the legendary martial artist Sonny Chiba, a new narrated text prologue was added when the film was released in English. Right down to the bogus citation, it's almost word-for-word identical to Jules' big speech, although Tarantino naturally had to take out the reference to Chiba's character.
"And they shall know that I am Chiba, the bodyguard, when I shall lay my vengeance upon them."
Tarantino would eventually get the chance to work with Chiba during production on Kill Bill, in which the Japanese actor plays the master swordsmith Hattori Hanzo. Actor Eric Stoltz appears in Pulp Fiction as Lance, the local drug dealer who supplies Vince with the drugs that almost kill Mia Wallace. In one of the film's most memorable moments, he has to show the frantic hitman how to revive her with a syringe of adrenaline. But before all that, Lance is lounging on the sofa watching TV with a bowl of cereal in hand. The specific brand is the kind of detail most directors wouldn't think twice about, but it was serious business to Tarantino. He chose Fruit Brute, the long-discontinued monster-themed cereal that used to adorn grocery store shelves during the Halloween season, along with its more famous counterparts Count Chocula and Frankenberry. The brand went out of regular circulation 8 Halloweens after its debut, and was soon forgotten by just about everyone, except for Tarantino, apparently. General Mills did eventually bring Fruit Brute back to store shelves in 2013 to haunt your breakfast table, but that was nearly 20 years after Pulp Fiction's release. This wasn't even the first time the director snuck the discontinued brand into one of his movies, as you can see a box of it in Mr. Orange's apartment in Reservoir Dogs. For over 25 years, Pulp Fiction fans have wanted to know just one thing. What exactly is inside that glowing briefcase? All we know is that Jules and Vince are willing to kill for it, and even though they open it up multiple times, we never actually see inside it, or get any hint other than the unearthly glow.
Is that what I think it is?
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
That mystery is an essential part of Pulp Fiction's lasting appeal, but Tarantino started out with a much more concrete answer. His early drafts with Roger Avary revealed that the briefcase contained the same diamonds that the hapless heisters from Reservoir Dogs had been fighting to get their hands on. Apparently, that was considered too predictable, so the writers decided to leave it up to the audience. It's an idea that proves Tarantino steals from the best. The 1955 film noir classic Kiss Me Deadly also revolves around a mysterious case, and we never see anything but a glow coming from inside that one either. We know that particular film was on Tarantino's mind as he wrote Pulp Fiction. As he told Sight and Sound, "I wanted Bruce Willis's character Butch to be basically like Ralph Meeker as Mike Hammer and Robert Aldrich's Kiss Me Deadly." Pulp Fiction restored John Travolta's cool when he was cast as the character Vincent Vega. The man has cool clothes, cool dialogue, and of course a cool car. Tarantino certainly thinks so, as that's his own red Chevy that Vince is driving. According to Hot Cars, the director bought the '64 Chevy Malibu Super Sport 5 years earlier with the money he made selling the script for True Romance. It was part of the Chevelle series. They were Chevrolet's first muscle cars, and they became a favorite for classic car fans. That made it a tempting target for carjackers. And the Malibu went missing from Tarantino's LA home the year Pulp Fiction premiered. The director probably assumed he'd never get it back, but he did, over 15 years later. In 2013, TMZ reported that the Malibu was found. Its owner at the time wasn't charged, which only seems fair. After all, it probably changed hands many times since the original thief got a hold of it. There's nothing Quentin Tarantino loves more than dropping references to other movies into his own. In the twist contest, and Jackrabbit Slims is full of them. On the Blu-ray release's Chit Chat documentary extra, John Travolta recalled that Tarantino showed him Jean-Luc Godard's Bon Départ to pinpoint the vibe he was looking for. Pulp Fiction references one of its most famous scenes, in which the main trio danced to the jukebox in a coffee shop. But instead of music, there's narration describing their inner thoughts. Bon Départ obviously made a big impression on Tarantino. After all, he named his own production company A Band Apart.
Now I want to dance, I want to win, I want that trophy. So dance good.
Fans of classic movies may also recognize some of Uma Thurman and Travolta's moves from an even more important classic of European cinema. Federico Fellini's 8.5 combines fantasy and autobiography for a story of a filmmaker battling creative frustration and existential despair. He turns that dour setup into a whole lot of fun, including a dance sequence that looks an awful lot like the one in Jackrabbit Slims. Most people probably don't notice these references at first glance, but there's another move that superhero fans might notice. At one point, Travolta waves two fingers in front of his eyes, which is the signature move in the Batusi, a dance from the classic 60s Batman series starring Adam West. Vincent Vega has a bad habit of going to the bathroom at the worst times. When Butch runs home to pick up his watch, he finds Vince waiting for him and shoots him as he leaves the toilet. Later in the film, but earlier chronologically, Vince takes another trip to the John and misses Jules' confrontation with the stick-up artists in the diner. Both times, he's carrying a copy of Modesty Blaise, one of a series of spy thrillers starring writer Peter O'Donnell's comic strip heroine. Modesty was a former war orphan and international criminal who does freelance work for the British Secret Service. Quentin Tarantino is obviously a fan, and he nearly put his own stamp on the character. At some point, Miramax bought the rights to the Modesty Blaise series, apparently in the hopes that Tarantino would make a big screen adaptation. Nothing ever came of it. So, in order to keep from losing the rights, the studio turned out a quickie direct-to-video movie called My Name is Modesty. Variety reported that the whole thing was thrown together in 18 days, with a director who'd only been on the job for a week before filming started. Tarantino still hasn't shown any indication of making his own Modesty movie, but he did get a credit on My Name is Modesty as producer. If there's another monologue in Pulp Fiction as memorable as Ezekiel 25:17, it's the one Christopher Walken recites during a single scene as Captain Coons. He arrives in a flashback to Butch Coolidge's childhood to deliver the boy's heirloom watch, along with its rather crappy history.
He hid it. In one place he knew he could hide something, his ass. 5 long years he wore this watch, up his ass.
One of the watch's previous owners, Dane Coolidge, died in World War II at the Battle of Wake Island, but not before entrusting the watch to an Air Force gunner named Winaki. The man's name seems like an odd detail to include, so it's no surprise that Tarantino didn't throw it in on a whim. It's a tribute to Howard Hawks, the multi-talented old Hollywood master behind movies ranging from romantic comedies like His Girl Friday and Bringing Up Baby, to film noir classics like The Big Sleep. The younger director paid his debt to his inspiration by placing the events of former pilot Hawks' 1943 war flick Air Force in the Pulp Fiction world, inserting John Garfield's character into Captain Coon's story. Pulp Fiction's nonlinear storytelling was revolutionary in 1994, thanks in no small part to editor Sally Menke's Oscar-nominated work. Moments from early on in the film that seem insignificant gain new meaning once we see what happens before them. Quentin Tarantino didn't invent this style of storytelling. You can see it in classic novels like James Joyce's Ulysses and Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, but he turned it from an intellectual exercise to a crowd-pleasing gimmick. In the process, he inspired hundreds of imitators, from Christopher Nolan's backwards breakout hit Memento to the intersecting plot lines of Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia. But not everyone was such a big fan. In a documentary extra included in one of Pulp Fiction's DVD releases, Samuel L. Jackson recalled, "I remember my mom saying, 'Why didn't they put the movie together right? It was jumping all over the place, back and forth, you're dead, you're alive, you're back, you're here.' I said, 'Ma, that's just how the movie works.'" Vincent Vega's name may sound familiar to fans of Tarantino's first film, Reservoir Dogs. The only named member of the color-coded crew is Michael Madsen's psychotic Mr. Blonde, who's also known as Vic Vega. That's more than just a coincidence. Tarantino envisioned the two characters as brothers and wrote a whole script exploring their relationship. Madsen recently revealed some of the details to The Hollywood Reporter. Vince and Vic would have met up after being released from different prisons and started a club in Amsterdam, neatly tying it to Vince's legendary discussion of the city in Pulp Fiction. Unfortunately, other projects kept getting in the way. And by now, both Madsen and Travolta are far too old to convincingly play their own younger selves. The idea still resurfaced, moving the time frame from before the characters' deaths to after, and instead focusing on two other Vega brothers who meet at their siblings' funeral. For now, though, it looks like either version will only ever exist in fans' imaginations.